Hi, it's Jenny, and this month at Art Anthology, the design team is trying to show you some great ideas that you can use to upcycle or recycle things in honor of Earth Day. So I took this lowly oatmeal container and transformed it using some wonderful Art Anthology paints and mist into this lovely container. The first thing you're going to want to do to prep your oatmeal box is to just peel the paper away from it, and then we're going to paint it with gesso. After you've completed this step, then we're going to start using some mist. I looked around the house to try and find some interesting things that I could incorporate into this project, and I found this fabric that was an open weave mesh, kind of a nylon fabric, and wrapped it around the canister and used it as a resist. I sprayed with Glorious to give it a nice base of yellow, which was going to blend really well with the blues and greens that I wanted to eventually have with this piece. And there you can see some of the texture, just a very subtle texture that it created. And then I started using in the colorations peacock feathers and studio blue to add those greens and blues. And like I said, this just mixed really pretty with the yellow. The yellow is still wet, so the colors run together and just give you interesting variations. Next, I wanted to build up some dimension on this piece. So I took a stencil and used the velvet paint in cotton and just a foam brush to apply this. And since this is a dimensional paint, it was a subtle design since it was in the cotton, but it built up that texture that I wanted to see on this. And I just used this all around on the canister. In some areas, the doily stencil was not complete. It was just a section of it that was used, but just do it so that it's pleasing to you. Now you're going to pull out some of your favorite leftover packaging material, bubble wrap, and we're going to paint onto the bubbles with some gesso, and then just use this like a stamp onto the canister to add some more texture. now it's time to start getting messy. We're going to take the Art Anthology Sorbet in Viridian, and we're just going to finger paint basically with this, rubbing it into that texture that we built up with the stencil and the cotton paint. And you don't want to obscure the cotton completely, just rub it in some areas to give some highlights and lowlights with your paint colors. I also used some Viva Decor Inca Gold, which is kind of like a rub and buff type gold, to add some gold to the high points. Not too much so it was garish, but just to give one more layer of light to that. And my Inca Gold was kind of old, so that's why you see me adding water to it, just so that I was able to use it. And I also used some old lace that I had as another type of resist, and I think I used the peacock feathers again, and this was very, very subtle, just another layer that if you look deep you'll see some of that design showing through. I took my final stencil, which was a script stencil, and I'm using a product called Wood Icing that I get from Stencil Girl. And it's a type of modeling paste, but I guess it's made from a wood byproduct. So it gives a really nice high definition when you're using it with stencils. So I had taped my stencil down a little bit as well as holding it, just because the round shape, it was a little bit hard to get a stencil to stay, but apparently my tape worked really well in this spot, so I had a little bit of a tough time getting it undone. But there you can see how great the script looks, but it's just the raw color right there, which is, you know, kind of a wood putty color. So you're going to let that dry before we do anything else to it. When you've used any kind of product like this, on your cleanup, don't go to your sink and rinse it off, because you know it's going to clog up your pipes. So you want to just try and get as much of it off as you can with a wet paper towel or a baby wipe. And a lot of people will keep just a bucket of water or a tray of water, and you can soak your stencils in that, or your tools, and then just pour that outside instead of down your sinks. Now that the wood icing's dry, we're ready to add some color to it. So I spritzed some of the heart colorations on my mat and then just used a foam brush to start applying it around, kind of on. You don't have to be really careful because the wood icing is going to absorb the color differently than the canister underneath. So you're still going to see the words clear, but it's going to blend differently underneath. And a lot of the blues that I used on the canister really mixed pretty with the heart and made some interesting purple colors. And I was anxious to see how this would turn out, so I used my heat gun to speed up the process a little bit. And you can see the blending of the colors. It's just like a really pretty abstract landscape, is what it reminded me of, the way that the colors had blended and finished on this piece. And I went back in with a little bit more of the Viva Decor Gold to bring out some highlights again of some of the letters. And to finish off this piece, I took some Mayart's flowers, and this flower comes on a roll like any of their ribbon does, but I just trim away the organza that it's mounted on. Just kind of roughly trim it. And then it takes the colors beautifully of any of the sprays. So again, I use the heart colorations, and you can see in the finished product this comes out a lot lighter on this than it did on the canister, but it still was in the same color family, so it worked out beautifully. When I finished the canister, I realized I wanted to tie in the color and the flowers a little bit more to the piece. So up around the top you can see that I just took some of the Fiesta Velvet dimensional paint and just rubbed that around the top. And it really tied the two together. Thanks for stopping by. Hope you'll come back and join us again soon.